golden drum.
I'm going to be disastrous at these pronunciations, but Miss Henry is both hahesh'kah, lead drummer, and dekanogisgi, traditional song carrier, the Native woman's traditional dancer. So you can read the rest of her story here, and she's going to be leading us in songs and dances. And to begin, she asks that everybody in this room actually exits, go out that door, and then make the proper return in a line, get into a line, and then come back in for this to begin properly. So everybody must stand up and motivate.
Make that the longest line.
Make a long line.
Don't get too comfortable in yours either. In fact, I might stand up right now because 3 hours drive is too long to sit. Sio tuiju, nigida gohiga, gohiesa, nigida chichi. Uodu anageya, aleanaskaya ahanihe. Uodu Eddi ale elisi hanihe. Ale hanihe. Which the league in Adamado. Unana hi erda. Anadu. Anani eliga. Wado. What you have done is begin as we would begin. In coming to the dance grounds. This doesn't happen every day. Dances are special occasions. But every day is special, so you never know when you might end up in the dance ground. all the times and seasons, they all have songs. Every event has a song, many songs. And that's not just true in North America among the nations I descend from. It's true among the nations of North and South America, and really among indigenous and indigenous everywhere. If you have not become disconnected from the earth, you have songs for those events of life. You do. Whether your indigenous life begins in Poland, or in Japan, or in Brazil, or in Sweden, where the Sami live, you have, reaching back far enough, you have songs for these times, for all the times of life, and dances. It's a matter of reaching back. So when I was thinking about, Kira gave me a title. She called it Songs and Dances from Our Ancestors. And I smiled. I said, well, you know, they all come from there. At one point or another, they do. Some are old. So I began you after the ways of those of my mother's people who come from the island of Cuba, which you know is an insane island, right? Arawaka people, you heard that word in the song. It said to come and be one with us, come and be friends with us, come be blood relatives with us. And the song, since we were on the subject of old and ancestors, that's one of the oldest songs known in North America. And the reason we know that it predates contact is it hasn't changed since before that man they called Columbus. So when he came and landed, because you know he didn't never land on the mainland, right? You guys know that, right? He never made it to the mainland? Huh. History. When he landed in the islands, and he came 4 times, he had to have heard this song, because this is the original welcome song. So it speaks to the open, incredibly open heart, and the welcoming nature of the people that he greeted. And it really is as much to all things that lived as it was to the people who came with those strange white sails. So having given you an old song, I'm a good one for putting you to work right away. So I'm going to bring you into the village by way of a new song. So I'm going to divide the room right here. You go that way. You go that way. I know you're snuggled together, but can you sing a part against him and hold it? I know you can do it. I'm going to divide it right here, and then I'm going to divide it. I don't want to split any heads. I'm going to. Who in the room would say they are loud when they sing? Hands up. Fess up. I'm on. Fess up. You know I'm on. Fess up. Okay, so you're kind of evenly divided, so it almost doesn't matter. So I'm going to divide the room here and from this gentleman over. Right, this quarter of the room. And you are a quarter of the room. And then I'm going to divide the room. Honey, over here. I'm going to divide it from that lovely lady next to you over. I'm going to divide it this way to the front, and you guys to the back, because you've got my husband John back here, and he's loud. Okay. So we're here. Okay. So we'll call you A, B, C, D. Those letters don't look, and we don't have individual letters in Chalagi, so I figured if I gave you na, sa, da, ko, you know, it would be confusing. So, this song is a song actually that I created working with a man named Jack DeJohnette, who was a very, very famous jazz drummer. He's kind of the grandfather of jazz drumming, and he's a friend. Quite a while ago, he did a project called Music for the Fifth World. And we collaborated on the whole thing. And in the conversations we had talking about villages, I had been hearing this song, because we call that, we don't say you made a song, we say you caught it. So I had been hearing these pieces. So I'm going to give each of you a piece, and when you sing all together, I will sing a piece against you, or with you. What you'll discover is the feeling that you would have walking into any one of our ancient villages, where each part of the village, each clan has its own things to do, its own responsibilities, and its own song. You'll feel it, and that will begin us in the day of the village. So. Okay, so let's see. Shall I begin? Being neat, I think I'll begin here. Ready? Guys, ready? Yep, he's keeping track. Ready? So this group, right after that lovely lady in the rose sweater, your line is, the word you are saying means peace. A place of peace. And it refers to, and I'll tell you a story about what it refers to later. But it's critical to the Chalagi way of life. You say, the word is dohi, and you say it like this. Do 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 dohi. 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 Do 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 dohi. Don't even think about that part. You'll never get that. Never do that part. You got it here? Yes. Did you trust it? Did you trust it? When you sing it, I'll start you. Okay? You ready? So the words that you have here, they mean, Mother, we all live here. They're referring to Mother Earth. That's what it means. Mother, we all live here. Every one of us, we all live on this Mother Earth. And your line is, you ready? Echi idinela. Say it again to me. Echi idinela. One more time. Echi idinela. And you sing it like this. Echi idinela. 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 You feeling kind of solid there, more or less, a little bit? Need to do it again? We'll come back around. You'll be doing it. You're sure? You don't want to do it one more time? This is your shot. Okay. Echi idinela. Echi idinela. Echi idinela. Echi idinela. Okay. I trust you with that. Okay, you're solid. You got that? How are we doing here? One more time. do 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 he. 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 Six of them. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. There we go. Yeah, sounds pretty good. Now let me take a trip over here. Okay. Let's see. You ready? Sure. You ready? You sure? Because you guys just learned the front. We're really supposed to learn the back. But it's okay. No, it's okay. I'll fix it over there. Watch it. I'll fix it over there. Watch it. So you have, your words mean here, now, dance and sing. Here, now, dance and sing. So your words are need, come, hahesh'kah, dekanogisgi. One more time. Need, come, hahesh'kah, dekanogisgi. One more time. Need, come, hahesh'kah, dekanogisgi. Okay, you guys hang on to that. Don't get distracted over there. I'm like, what do they have? It's like my children, my kids, when they go, okay, what do you want? When kids are little, they want to know what everybody else has, right? Okay, so yours goes around and around and around itself over and over again. It just comes right back in and again. It doesn't have any break in it like theirs does. Ready? So we go. Ni, come, hahesh'kah, dekanogisgi. 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 You would get a little shorter between the knee and the come, so it's like knee, come, hahesh'kah, dekanogisgi. 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 Okay, sounds pretty good over here. You guys. Now actually, I just taught you their part, so you guys should be really happy because your part is so easy. Ready? You ready? I know, they were supposed to get that high note, but guess what? I know you can do it. You sound great. Ready? How are we doing? How are we doing over in that far corner over there? How are we doing over in my northwestern corner there? How are we doing down here? This is the ground bass. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. So you actually don't even start on one. You actually start on two. But you don't have to think about that. You'll feel it. They figure it out from you. No, they figure it out from you because you're first. You In the world of mother we live here. Keep all those little pieces separate because the way they write our language, when they write it with syllables instead of writing it in the way our language looks, they put dashes between stuff. So same thing, like idinela. So everything is equal in that word. Idinela. Idinela. Excellent. Okay, I'm checking in with Dohi. I'm going to be hard and ground. The peace place. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Going. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Going. Do 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 he. Do 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 he. Hey! sounds like. We don't even know until we stop to listen. So next time you're walking in New York, because New York is full of music, and it's not just the guy who's practicing up in his window, in his loft. Just listen to the rhythms. Listen to the rhythms. Because people are vibrational beings. We are made of sound. We are vibration. Ask any physicist. So there's no way that our vibration will not create sound and interrelatedness. And in the indigenous way of thinking, and our world, the worldview of indigenous people everywhere, it is our task to be in harmony, which is what dohi really means. Dohi in Chalagi means harmony, serenity, peace, balance, and three other things. It is one word for all those English words, and that's the deal with English. So, now that we're in the village, let's see what's going on in the village that we mentioned. This one first, and then you can see this. A long time ago, when animal and people no longer spoke the same language, at least not well, they were losing it. They were losing it. It was a powerful time for teaching, but they were losing that because it was difficult to live in the world, just to live in the world as a being with no fur and no scales and two wobbly legs, and I mean it was a mess. It took being into, they knew enough to be in tune with the things they needed for life and to ask. We've never ever forgotten that. But in that time, in the Chalagi tradition, the Cherokee tradition, our first man and woman lived in the world. And in that world, they were called, first man was Ganadi, and first woman was Selu, which is our word for corn. Mice. We were people still learning about how things move. And most of the time, first man and first woman were in good relationship. Because just like your voices had a relationship and all your claps came in different places and together they made a rhythm separate from the rhythm of your voices, and together you made a rhythm separate from the rhythms that you had individually. That's about relationship. And the crowning lesson for first man and first woman was how to be in relationship in these early times. But you know how it is with two-legged people? Sometimes they just cannot get along. And so there was a day when first man and first woman had a terrible row, a terrible disagreement. It really wasn't even over something terribly important. But they both dug in. We all know what it is to dig in, right? You know, this is it. I'm in. This is it. So they both dug in. My students would say, "Where's your shawl?" I would say, it's really warm in here, and I know that doesn't make any difference. Here we go. And so on this day, when they disagreed over something not so unimportant that to this day the story does not tell us what they disagreed about, which when I asked my grandparents about that, they said the point is it was so insignificant that no one passed that on. Maybe they just didn't ever want to do that again, right? Seilu's heart was bursting. She was so hurt that they were in disagreement. It was impossible to even be in the same home. It was impossible. It was so full of the sounds and the feelings, the song of their disagreement, that she burst out the door and she ran straight across their field into the woods. Because we live in a place where the woods are thick and deep. That's the original Chalagi place of living. Nothing like Oklahoma, where you'd have to hunt for a tree. Unless you call those dead oil derricks trees. So off she went, off into the woods. And at first man dug in. He wasn't going to handle it. He wasn't going to handle it. Ah, see. And he went about the things he had to do that day. He had spent his previous day hunting, and so he had rabbits to skin. He wasn't going to tan those. Oh no, that was first woman's job. But he had things to do, and so he went about doing them, and the day went on. It came around to where usually they would stop and eat. Today I think they call it lunchtime, or meals don't work just like that. And there was no one to prepare it. And at first he thought, fine, I'll do it myself. Because he was still full of the sound of their disagreement. And he grabbed some dry jerky and on he went. But the sun moved in the sky. Grandmother's son went by on past and she saw what was happening and she remained quiet to let the two-leggeds work out what they had to do. It became late afternoon and before you know it, it was dusk. And there was no Seilu, no first woman. And now, because his heart was really so full of his love for first woman, that displaced anything else, he began to be really concerned. And when the sun had gone down completely, and the sky was roses and golds and ambers, he thought about the night, and he thought he ought to go find her. Now, deep in the woods, first woman had run without a thought. She was so upset, she paid no attention to her trail. She was so upset that she did not look at the tracks around her to see what was living around her there. She knew she lived there, but she did not know what was there that day, because those things change in the woods every day. I know we live in the woods. Every day things change. And she ran until she was exhausted. And she threw herself down by a tree and wept and wept and wept. She wept until she fell asleep. And when she woke up, was quite dark, and all she could hear was the sounds of the night. All she could hear were the sounds of the night, the creaking of the trees as they settled, as the moisture changed and the air cooled. And she looked around, she looked up, and the trees were tall and thick, so she knew she was deep, deep into those traditional woods. And she looked around, and she did not recognize a single tree. They were trees she was accustomed to, but no place was familiar that she sat. And her first thought was not, I'm lost, or I don't know where I am. Her first thought was, it's so late. I don't know how long it will take me to get back to make First Man's supper. He'll be hungry. He'll be tired. Because her heart was so full of that love for First Man that it displaced all the energies and all the song of that disagreement. She looked around. And she thought about how she might start. So she started by listening. And she started by looking. My grandmother would have said it was like this. So she said to us all the time, right? Get it? Like that. So she was listening and watching me. And as she looked and listened, she had been in one place long enough that while there were depressions in the grasses that might have been a trail, there were so many depressions everywhere from animals that had passed her while she slept, or come up to her and checked on her while she slept, that she could not really tell what was hers and what was not. And the moon began to creep over the horizon. As soon as the first ray of the moon touched the grasses, she noticed tiny, the tiniest of white flowers, really tiny, with 5 petals, like the fingers of a hand, and a tiny yellow center. She thought how beautiful it was, and that she should take some back. So she made an offering, because no matter how upset you are, you just don't go anywhere without your cornmeal and tobacco. You just don't. Doesn't happen. And as she reached down to pick a few, she noticed that underneath them there was a heart-shaped leaf. Not so much like that, more like the shape of a real heart. And underneath that leaf, there were tiny, 2 or 3 tiny red berries, no bigger than my fingernail. Irresistibly, because they were so yummy looking and it had been a long time since she'd eaten, she picked one. It was so sweet. She picked the other 2 and the juice ran down her chin. It was so sweet. And she thought, Ganadi has to taste these. And she began to gather those berries, little tiny ones, looking around, because with the moon higher in the sky, she could see patches here and there where she could gather. And so she began to follow those and to gather those berries in her hand, and then finally, you wonder why we have these things? In her shawl. Ganadi had come as far as he could guess that Selu had run. At first, it was, even at that late date, he felt, because he was accustomed to tracking, that her tracks were clear. But then he got to a place where the woods were thick enough that, and overtrammeled, that he wasn't sure. And then he noticed that in the light of the moon, there was a pattern of tiny white flowers in the direction he could see a single trail where surely Selu had gone, crying. For truly her tears had dropped those flowers. So he began to follow that trail carefully. In fact, it was, even with the moon coming up, there was just enough light to illuminate those flowers. And because they were both looking down, Selu and Ganadi practically knocked heads in the forest. They looked up and they saw one another. And they ran to each other and held each other very, very close. No words were spoken about what had happened, because it was already understood. It's our way. It was already understood that that was not, it was past and therefore not important. And that what was important was where they were together now. Selu showed him her beautiful berries. She put berries in his mouth and he was amazed. And they walked back together, eventually laughing at themselves for what could possibly have been so important that it drove them apart. They even managed to get a few of those berries home, which, if you've ever picked wild strawberries, you know it is no easy task. And when they did, Selu took them and she put them in a bladder sack, because those hold water. The bladder of the deer will hold water, because it did when it was in the deer, right? Think about it. And she put them in there, and she took a little of the sap of the maple tree. Although some people tell the story and they say she took honey from the bees. I heard it was maple sap. And she took that, but that's another story. And she poured it over the strawberries and she closed it up. And that was the first strawberry jam. And you may laugh, but to this day, Chalani couples always have strawberry jam in our houses, somewhere in our house, because that is the reminder of the agreement that no matter what may come between them, that what is really important is the sweetness of our love for one another. And that is right relationship. So you're not going to put you to work again now, right? Wouldn't want you to sit too long. Because if we talk about right relationship, we need to talk about how that is taught in other cultures as well, in other indigenous cultures. So I'm going to travel north to the land of my husband's people, dekanogisgi, Mohawk people, Mohawk, Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida. Tuscarora actually came from down south, where Chalagi come from, and we pushed them up north. Yeah, we can be like that. So those together, they are referred to as the Six Nations today. And you need to know that just as songs and dances come from, they may come from ancient life experiences, they also travel and are shared because people come together to gather the things that they need that they don't have where they come from. If I really want a good cactus fruit, I am not going to find it in Chalagi country. I've got to go to the Inde part of the family. I've got to go and see what they have to say and trade for it in the Southwest. If I want a really good birch beer, we make it from the tips of the birch. And it's not, I don't know if beer is the right word, but that's the best translation I got. But we make a birch drink that's really good. I have to travel north for that, because the right kind of birch does not grow in the Southwest. So people come together and trade all the time, and just in case you didn't know this, although I always think people know this already, the word powwow, which people think of now as a lot of singing and dancing, or they might think of the way the business world, the Western business world uses it, like we're going to have a powwow, meaning we're going to have a serious meeting. Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Just for the record, that is an Algonquin word, and it means to gather together to make medicine. So it has a very different purpose than a business meeting. And it has a very different, it is a meeting rather, yes, of minds, but of minds connected to the hearts. And it represents today an entire culture, which we'll get into in a minute, within our Native North American people. It is its own animal anymore. But this word, as it originally is spoken, powwow, and guess what, it isn't spelled like they write it either. It referred to the meetings of nations. They would come together to special places to trade. I sang at such a place once in Pennsylvania. They call it the Kittanning Trail. And there's a place on the Kittanning Trail where traditionally nations met. Algonquin and Haudenosaunee, that would be Mohawk, Seneca, Cayuga. And nations from the far south, like the Great Chalagi Nation, Great Cherokee Nation, and what they call the 5 civilized tribes. I don't know what that was supposed to mean either. Choctaw, Chickasaw, Mississippi, Chalagi. And so forth. These nations came together there along the Kittanning Trail to trade. You can't trade just things. It doesn't happen. People talk, they share ideas, they trade songs. And so the dance I'm about to teach you comes from way in the south, among Seminole and Mississippi people. So you know that's like Florida, eh? But it found its way all the way to the north. among the Haudenosaunee. And this is a dance that really talks about relationships. So find a partner. Find a partner. Grab your own or borrow somebody else's and stand up. We can make these hairs go around. I think we'll make it around. I think we'll make it because we might squish it. I'll squish it. Yeah, I think it'll be all about it. So if you have a partner, you would like to have, let's see, you would like to turn around because in the West and part of the South, the dancers go the way the sun goes. They go sunwise. Like this. I think you might call that clockwise, but clocks on me don't run like that. Clocks on me get messed up. But it's just they don't work. However, Haudenosaunee people and those of my family that live in the far northwest dance, and sometimes Chalagi on special occasions, dance the way not the sun goes, but the way the planet goes, which is counter to that. So the sun goes this way, and Mother Earth, the sun goes this way because Mother Earth is going this way. Am I making sense? What? I can't hear you. Am I making sense? Yeah. There we go. So we're going to be going that way. So John and I are going to go, when we go, we're going to go that way. So John and I are going to go all the way over there. So you and your partners should line up behind one another. With the woman on the outside. And the man on the inside. So if you have taken the man's part, and we're going to be going that way. So let's just talk about alligators for a second. Anybody know anything about alligators? They bite. Oh yeah, they do that. What's a primary characteristic of alligators? Anybody? Say that again, nice and loud. Big teeth, absolutely. Big teeth. Any other big characteristics of alligators?
Big tail.
Big tail. Oh, excellent. And that's what this is all about. Together, the man and the woman make an extraordinary alligator. The partnership is perfect in the creation of alligator. Because the man represents the alligator with his very strong teeth, his big jaw. And the woman represents the alligator with her very strong tail. And what you may or may not know about alligators, if you haven't seen them alive or on some kind of really clever, brave reality show, is that alligators kill their prey they eat their prey, they prefer it slightly, they prefer it living. So, like a lot of rabbits. So they slap the water with their tail, stun the fish, and then they just browse on through. So that tail is critical. And the jaw is critical. Without that, so, together, so, cross hands, join hands with your partner. Just join hands. It's not complicated. And you're gonna. How are you guys doing there? Yep. Now, Here's the clever part. Here's where you're going to hope those chairs will push in a little. In native dance, there is one step for every beat. So if you have a step, if you hear a beat, there's a step. If you hear a beat, there's a step. So, step, 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 step. Now you know it's not going to go this fast, right? Step, step. Okay, get ready. I'm going to double it up. Keep stepping. Step, 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 step. Now I'm just warning you, it's lovely, but it's not this slow. Step, step, step. It's probably about twice as fast. So let's practice it twice as fast. Ready? Here we go. Step, 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 step. One step for every beat. And actually, this is a kind of okay. Excellent. And now you will stop. So now we know you know the step. Occasionally in the song, you'll hear a place where you really get to stamp. But on the whole, in general, especially in moccasins, on the whole, we tread lightly on our mother's face. We tread gently. So, there is a place in the song where you'll hear a stamp, and you'll hear it. Now the other thing is that there's a place in the song where the alligator swings his tail. You ready? I know she's looking at you like, I know they're looking at you like, So, you'll know where it is every time because it sounds like this. Hey! And before that, you have to answer the singer. That's called call and response. So I'll say yo-ho, and you'll say we-yay.
We-yay.
Yo-ho!
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 We-yay.
Yo! Hey! What's gonna happen? He's gonna swing the tail! Now that only happens one good time. So, let's So we'll practice just that one swing one more time. Yo-ho!
We-yay.
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 Yo! Okay, you ready? So whenever you hear that, hey, you know what to do. Be good to your tail, and your tail will bring you many fish. So, let's remember, one step for every beat. So I'm going to speed this up just a little bit, because it normally is a little faster in the long house. you a note, a footnote about powwows as they are today. My son is a champion smoke dancer and a champion voice traditional dancer. And if he were dancing these days instead of being in grad school, he would undoubtedly be a champion men's traditional dancer. Because he really, when he starts, they always, especially if there's an evening dance and the fire's up, when you watch it, people always say, "Oh my gosh, the old people are dancing through him." You see it. You see him. You see those old people, and it's like any mom. I'm just like, ah. They come and get me. They go, "You have to see. Go, cameras up. Go look. Go look." So the note about powwows is that powwows today have not lost that element of trade and exchange, but they've grown in a number of ways. Most of them pretty good. What they've become, besides, they're always now an opportunity for you to see family and friends from all over the country that you don't get to see normally. And that, I think, is one of their most powerful remaining strengths. That is the core of that which has not been lost. And they provide opportunities for people to share their art through performances, because there's always a break between one set of dancing and another. And they provide opportunities for people to communicate and get information from one place to another. This is the solidarity of Indigenous people when we dance at a powwow, because powwows now are participated in by people from one end of the Americas to another. And you may see at a good powwow, like Gathering of Nations, you may see Aztec headdresses, you may see Arawak headdresses, you may see Brazilian Amazonian headdresses, you may see the feathered capes of the old feather capes that Chaldean women used to wear. You may hear the tin cones of the jingle dancers of the Great Lakes nations, the Anishinaabe, Potawatomi. And what you'll see that people from everywhere. You may see, depending on where you are in the country, you may see the furs of the Yupik as they bring out their canoe dances. It really is an opportunity to participate in an extraordinary cultural exchange. And that's powwow at its best. Many are held traditionally and there's no competing involved. But a word about competition powwows, because they have gone both ways. Competition powwows often include drum competitions, dance competitions. There are all kinds of styles. And people dance for themselves. They dance to be the best, or they dance for their families. That's especially true if you're a grass dancer. My son is also a grass dancer, not just traditional. But those traditions, or a jingle dress dancer, you may dance for your family, because all of those dances have stories that brought them together. Just like the traditional male dancer is a reflection of the stories that person has to tell about their accomplishments. People automatically say in battle. But sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's also about their relationship to the world around them. I know you can assume it towards me now, but I'm getting caught. I know how it works. It's okay. So, powwow is really about that gathering and exchange. And the competition part has become, to be honest, it's become the way in which lots of our college kids get their college money. Because the sponsors of the stakes have become high. When that is lost, the sight of that is lost, then the original meaning of powwow is lost. And that's why people will always ask, is it a traditional powwow or a competition powwow? Because a traditional powwow simply gifts the dancers for coming, and everybody dances. Because we're taught all over Turtle Island, we're taught that it is necessary for our dances for Mother Earth to live. We support her heartbeat when we dance. That's what we dance for. We dance to keep her alive. And that's definitely a story for another day. So what I wanted to offer you, just to show you the differences in things, was I'd like to offer you a pawn, fairly contemporary, because you need to know that powwow as it is today, we call that contemporary, 1860s. In the life of our people, that's a drop in the ocean. So 1860s is contemporary for us. That's where it comes from. That's where, as it is today, as powwows are today, that's where we come from. So I'd like to offer you a Pawnee song that is a traditional song. The traditional dancers do it, but actually they use it as an intertribal, which means everybody dances, all the styles dance together. And you can feel the power and the happiness in that. And then I'd like to see if you cannot learn a traditional song. So this is the Pawnee song. This is like way too loud for that. I'm going to stand up and it's going to blow right out. But this is a Utah round dance. Working a big drum. And she is Haudenosaunee. She's got a hot mohawk. Her name is Alison Phillips, and that is a song she wrote, thinking of her children. So let's turn out that. But that is the beat that goes with that. So you can see there are different beats and different styles, and they give you different feelings. The song I'd like finally to close with is a song that I actually sang here tonight. And it was a fundraising benefit for World Peace and Prayer Day, about which you are welcome to ask me afterwards, or ask John afterwards, because it will be for the first time in 19 years in the Hudson Valley, in Wappingers Falls, which is basically Poughkeepsie, on the Hudson. It happens every year. It is done every year on the solstice. And there's 4 days of prayer and a 4-day sacred fire, and brings together people from all traditions, leaders, spiritual leaders from all different traditions, speakers, environmentalists, earth activists, artists, and is a cross-cultural celebration focused around praying for our Mother Earth, because the energy of prayer is so powerful that it's going to take each and every one of us. We're out of time to be separate. And so I chose to sing this song that night because in Chalagi, this word that you're about to learn, because you've learned Chalagi at the beginning, so now it's time to learn it at the end. Dohi, remember that word? You said it was in Dohi, right? Dohi, which means harmony, peace, serenity, balance. Dohi gesesti. So let's say it piece by piece. Do, he, ge, ses, di. Do, he, ge, ses, di. Now, in this song, if you observe, it is sung 4 times. The caller sings it twice, so that doesn't count. The singers respond with it twice. Then it is said in the second half of the song once, and then once again. So it calls for peace over all Mother Earth, because that's what that means. It means peace over all of Mother Earth. It calls for that peace from the 4 powers. From the east, where we came in. From the south, where the fire burns the longest. From the west, where the moon goes to sleep and the stars are most visible. From the north, where the elders live. It comes from it calls for those powers to encourage us and support us in the remaking of that peace. And I couldn't think of anything more important for us to do in a time where there are more than 2 people gathered. So, your job is to sing Dohi Gesesti those 4 times. That's all. You'll pick it up. Because truthfully, as a song carrier, I was never allowed to record things. They taught me by singing to me, and I had to sing it until I got it. From I was like little. So you'll pick it up because in your hearts, it's what we all want. That peace over all Mother Earth. The end of the song, the words that you hear between them, they say, live, dream, be for that reason. So the song says, peace over all Mother Earth, peace over all Mother Earth. Everybody wants that. Everybody is giving for that. Peace over all Mother Earth, peace over all Mother Earth. Live, dream, be for that reason. Make sense? So, Dohi Gesesi. You say it from here, it won't matter. It's spirit will do. I'm going to sing it twice, you get back to me. Dohi Gesesi, Dohi Gesesi, Dohi Gesesi, Dohi Gesesi. water. And we'll see you soon again.
I'm saying that people will have questions for you. They can take a few questions from the audience.
Sure, if you want. Are you feeling questioning? I don't know. I think you'd be feeling like hot and thirsty. Fire away. We'll give you one. We'll give you two. I don't know if I'll have any answers, but if you have questions, we'll see what happens. See?
Okay.
See, music is self-explanatory. Experience can't be beat.
The answer to all questions.
I'd like to know what you did with the turtle. What I did with the turtle? I played it when you came in, but you were somewhere in love. I did. I played it. You were in love. Now you know what that Next to the heart, after the heartbeat, the next original drum. Turtles naturally, by their nature, have 1, 2, 3, or 4 tones in the shell. Naturally. This one has like 2.5, 3. I have a little one that has 4, and a little one that has 2. So you don't know. It depends. It's really unusual for the turtle. How do they know? Our word is sandugi. That's all it is. But, however, when it's made into a drum, the Kayana Arawak call it Mayawakan. And that also refers to a log drum, which is modeled after the turtle. A big log drum, a log with slots in it so that you get pitches the same way. And now, on the other hand, as I understand it, the hahesh'kah, they call this same drum Paponatsli. That was the first word I learned for it. And that's a question.
Cool, guys. Well, thank you. Let's take a little break for some ablutions. Is that the right word?
I don't know, ablutions is like washing up.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of that if you want.
Go eat.
Yeah, have
Go eat, John. What could be better?
We have
some food.
Oh, yes, it is.
Golden Drum.